everybody. It's 8 o'clock, and we are the Gun Cranks. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. That's Roy Huntington waving at you, and Guns Magazine editor. I'm Guns Magazine American Handgunner editor Tom McHale.
I've been working on my crown wave, British royalty and all that.
Yes,
I'm gonna class up this show.
Well, that's impossible.
I'm babbling,
it
so
is
I
backwards,
had to have
isn't
coffee.
it? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it? Oh. You should have got all this stuff figured out before we came live, but hey, what can you do? So anyway, thanks for joining us. It's our usual Wednesday meeting. Shh, don't tell anybody. Actually, you should tell everybody. As we said last week, build a small religious shrine to this program. So we thought tonight, it would be fun to talk about top secret shooting tips from your FMG team. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Top secret? I thought they were just helpful shooting tips.
Oh, top secret is spicier, and we got to be spicy, right?
We'll fool people into listening if we say that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, we all know that nobody wants the time, but they just want to get the top secret tip so they can be like the gunfighter from hell.
Got it.
So this was suggested by Tom. So Tom, would you like to lead the chorus in the first verse and chapter?
Shooting tips? Yeah. Put this to good use is kind of the foundation of this tip. But a serious question. This is the hardest thing to teach, right? I mean, you can talk and blather on all day about all that's really, I won't say all that's really important, but the most important thing for accurate shooting is to make sure you can do this without moving the gun, right? And we're talking about handguns here. So that's an extra special case, because most handguns, like here's a training pistol. It's kind of modeled after a Glock. Have about at least a 5.5 pound pressure to move that trigger, right? But this whole gun only weighs less than 2 pounds. So what's going to want to move when you apply that 5.5 pound force, right? So that's what it all boils down to, is slow, smooth trigger press. So I don't monologue here. How do you do that? How do you build that habit of a
bite? Tom, how do you do that?
I can ask you. I'm happy to. I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. So if you guys want to just duck out of the show, I'll go on for the next 30 minutes.
I'll go get some coffee.
No, I think, what's helpful. I think slow and smooth, nice, slow trigger press. Don't worry about when it's going to fire. You just focus on moving that trigger as slow as you can. Now, this is during practice. That I find helpful. How about you guys?
When I teach people, everyone anticipates it, and it's for some reason we're all anxious, and you see them and they pull, and then they go, I can't stand the pressure anymore, the tension, I can't do it, and then they pull it through that last little bit. So they've got a perfect trigger pull going, nice and smooth, nothing's moving, and then all of a sudden they just can't stand it, and they want it to go bang, so they hurry that last little bit, and that's the part.
And what happens then?
Then the gun barrel moves, just like you said, and then the bullet hits the dog next door. So somebody told me one time, a million years ago, it was when I first took up PPC shooting, and it was this old grandmaster guy. Now these guys shoot 598, 599, or 600 out of 600, and that's double action revolver out to 50 yards. And so these guys really know about trigger press. And he was one of those old guys. Just says, kid, he says, pretend you got a dime on your front sight, and when you pull the trigger, you don't want the dime to fall off. And for some reason, that just really struck me. And so at the time, we had these big, tall, flat-topped front sights, and you could balance a dime on them. And so that's what I did. And then you just get to where it becomes automatic after that.
Yeah.
Of course, now with a Glock, you could balance, like your grandmother's crystal knickknacks on there, and they probably wouldn't come off unless you really hammer on the trigger. Right? Analogy. It's an analogy.
It's like, where did that come from? Now I got to get some and balance them on a Glock.
There's a video for you.
Yeah, there's a Roy's backyard video if I ever saw one.
Your precious moments or your Hummel figurines.
He is out of control today. Can we blip him off or anything? Or I
He's,
know
blood
he's
he's
sugar's
not going to
low.
actually offer any tips. He's just going to stand back there and crack jokes. I
yeah,
think.
he's going to comment on while we're trying to be serious, I think. But
Okay.
seriously, trigger press though is, as Tom says, that's all where it's at. I have found that rifle shooters tend to easily transition to handgun shooting in many occasions. It's been my experience, because a good rifle shooter already understands all about trigger. I mean, because that's what it's about. And when you hand them a handgun, you say, hey, press the trigger like you do on an accurate rifle. They go, oh, okay. Right. They've got it. But
Right.
a person who just has only shot handguns has no idea how to shoot a rifle and doesn't understand that at all. And so what I have actually taken to doing sometimes is I put them behind a 22 bolt action rifle and then show them that, practice trigger press, trigger. And of course, and then it's easy to hit the target so they get excited and happy, right? Look, I'm hitting the target. And then we transition to shooting handguns, applying those techniques. So, Brent, do you have anything decent to say rather than smart aleck back comments about this?
Decent being the key word here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got nothing. No. I was going to say, if you're practicing with somebody who might have a little more experience, one of my favorite drills, and it really seems to help people, is do the trigger pull for them. Either, you put your finger on their finger, or you put your finger on the trigger and have them put their finger over the top, and you execute, hopefully, a very good trigger pull. And if they're just focusing on the sights, 99 times out of 100, the hit is going to be there, because they're just worried about the sights. They're not worried about jerking the trigger. You're not worried about the sights. You just, nice steady pull to the rear. And it helps illustrate for folks, especially less experienced folks, that, oh, that's how you do it. It's not that staging, like Roy said, or just smashing the trigger. It's a great illustration of the right way to do it. And even more experienced shooters, if they're really having a lot of trouble, it can kind of turn on that aha moment of, oh, that's right. There's what I'm not doing. So
it works every
real
time.
tip.
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up myself. It's great. Somebody's struggling with, that jerk or that anticipation at the last minute, get their finger out of the trigger completely and pull it for them. And every
Struggling
time
with a
it's gonna
jerk,
knock the center out of the bullseye, because everybody can hold the sights on target.
Right.
If they don't know when it's going to break, voila. Right?
Well, and you know what? I like to turn my back to the target. And so, in other words, you put your finger in the trigger guard. I like to do it on top of their finger so they can feel just how you press. And then I tell them just what you said. All you have to do is aim. That's all, and then I'll press the trigger. And then when they see that little tight group, because you're right, it'll be a little tight group. And then it's like suddenly they realize, okay, I don't have to worry about the sight picture so much. I need to concentrate on that trigger squeeze. And sometimes I'll even move the gun on purpose. I kind of move it just a little bit as I'm pulling the trigger. And I tell them, just keep the gun, just steady it the best you can. Don't worry about anything. And you still end up with a little group,
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
That brings up a really good point. And that is the cause of a jerky trigger press. And it kind of took me a while to figure out, as I was, teaching new shooters how to shoot, that there's this natural instinct to wait for the exact, you can tell them slow trigger press all day and they'll do it slow and slow and slow. But there's that instinct in the brain that says, wait till the sight is absolutely precisely perfect to the millimeter on the target. And then, and then pull a shot right then. And it's a hard thing to do. You just have to really say, look, forget about time. I call it, it's timing the shot is what it is. Yeah. Because if you're ever going to time it at that moment, you have to, by definition, jerk the trigger to make that work, right?
Have you seen the Palsy drill that a lot of instructors will use? You can sit there and shake the gun that hard. And if you just get the trigger pull right, obviously the group's not going to be super tight, but it's not going to be all over the target. People are like, well, how's that possible? You were shaking the gun like that. It's because we weren't chasing the sights. We were just trigger pull, and it's all going to be there generally in, the kill zone or the X-ring, whatever you're going for. And that's real eye-opening to new shooters too. It's like, how can that be? The gun is literally shaking like that and you're still getting hits. Well, quit chasing those sights and you'll get the hits too.
Embrace the wobble.
Well,
no, seriously, if you embrace the wobble, let it happen, and just forget about when the shot's going to go off and the group's this big. And then as you get better, your wobble zone shrinks and your group shrinks. And,
I see a t-shirt there. Embrace the
wobble.
You know,
Copyright 2020.
Wobble
Susie,
is your friend.
Susie brought home a friend of hers who literally has that. What's the real bad palsy? Bell's palsy or something like that. I mean, her hand just literally just, you know, was out of control basically. And she wanted to learn to shoot a gun. So what did she have? A J frame, you know? So
Yeah.
we put her at I put her about 3 yards away from a target. She shot on her own, literally all over the target, including missing the target at 3 yards. We did my back to the target, press the trigger thing while she, you know, just held the gun like that. Lo and behold, she's on the target. And so then we concentrated on trigger press, and within half an hour, she was absolutely competent, you know, with what she needed to do. That is a good illustration. I was not aware that you have trainers that are kind of doing that. The Palsy drill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I like that. I'll try that sometime.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you can't do it from real far, but even from 5 yards away, you can literally do that. And if you just, you know, focus on just steady, repetitive trigger pull, they'll all be there. And people are like, that's a magic trick. You can't do that. Well, you can, because, you know, the gun is only moving a little bit, you
Right.
know? So it's amazing that, you know, that versus somebody that's chasing the sights, especially then you throw a bad trigger pull on top of it. That's how you can miss the target at, you know, just a few yards, but you can still shake that gun and still get those hits.
Well, you know, when
So
I first
Brent
started,
actually did bring something of value to the show today. That's good.
Yeah,
For once.
don't tell. Yeah, when I first started doing PPC shooting, there were still guys who used to shoot bullseye in the 30s and 40s, and the bullseye shooters were all, you know, single action revolver, one-handed, you know, your other hand in your pocket, stand on the line like that. And those guys did chase the bullseye with the sights and trigger press. And so I think that's where that comes from, because they would start their press, and then as the sight slowly moved, if it moved off target, they would stop the press. And then as it approached the target, they would press again. And then if they went off, they stopped the press, you know, to where when it finally broke is when they were on the target. So of course, if you had that kind of trigger discipline, then you can play that game. But those were the guys that could shoot, you know, 1.5 inches offhand at 50 yards.
Yeah.
You know, one of the big problems that I have dealing with new shooters is trying to explain the concept of sight alignment and getting it where you need on the target and front sight focus and all that. What are some of the things you guys do to help get that idea embedded in there?
Tom, yeah.
I don't know. It's an okay illustration, but seriously, if you kind of get them to hold their hands and fingers up in front of them, you know, support hand out front, and V, and it kind of gives a little bit of an illustration, taking away all the complexity and uncertainty and anxiety around the gun itself and manipulating the gun, you know, top of the front finger, top of the rear fingers, eyeball, all in a straight line with the target. But that's why I love red dots. It's so easy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. And you know what?
that.
I was just going to say, but if I have someone who just can't get it, because you are asking a lot, it's like your, you know, trigger press, stance, sight picture, sight alignment. I mean, you know, there's just all the, and they're worried about recoil and they're worried about embarrassing themselves and all that. And you're exactly right. I have a 22 Ruger Standard Auto with a simple red dot on it. And then, so we moved to that. And then I just say, put the red dot on the target, press the trigger like we taught you, bang, 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 good. And then all I say is where those sights align, like you were illustrating, Tom, you know, by holding your fingers up. I said at the very top of the front sight, that's the red dot.
Right.
They go, oh, you know, I get it. Of course, then they always ask a good question. Well, then why don't we just use the red dot?
Yep.
Exactly. I don't always have a good answer.
It's a fair question, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. From the mouths of babes.
Exactly. Now we've talked about newer shooters. What about more experienced shooters? I guess I was sitting here thinking, I think one of the biggest things that experienced shooters struggle with is after you've got most of the basics down and you've got some experience, is this idea of getting wrapped around the axle. I know I do it. I know friends that do it. What do you guys do when you get to that point? It's like you're trying so hard and then you realize you're actually screwing up because you're trying so hard. Any little tips there? I go smoke a cigar.
I tell them to stop shooting and sell me your gun.
Yeah. It's a good strategy. Yeah. Dry fire.
Yeah.
You know, take all the pressure of figuring out where the shot landed out of the equation and just get back to pulling the trigger. Because I mean, you see it. I do it. I fall into traps where I'll be shooting, and for whatever reason, the slide doesn't lock back. If my thumb's a little off, and I notice on that blank shot, the muzzle dips. Like, wait a minute, why'd that happen? I was doing just fine. And
Yeah.
I think the thing to
take a break
remember,
and just pull the trigger a few times with nothing happening.
for all of us though, is I think that especially a lot of the competitors and new people especially, is remember that we're doing it mostly for fun. And so you need to like just chill out, and it's fun. And rather than wasting your 9mm or 45 or 40 ammo, get your 22 pistol. And we all have a 22 pistol, right? Get your 22 pistol out and a box ammunition, and go and just have some fun for a half an hour. Yep. And then I find that I kind of get grounded again. It's like, oh, okay, this is just fun. And you see the little tiny groups, and you play some games on the target, and and then that will get you a little bit centered. So, because I know sometimes when you're trying to run plates, like a plate rack, and you go ping, 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 and they all fall, except when you go ping, 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 miss, bink, miss, and then miss, bink, miss, and 200 rounds later, you're just aggravated.
Yeah. Well, I had an experience the last time I actually competed. I had a good friend. I was stinking during our preliminaries. I was stinking the place up terribly. And my friend grabbed me and said, just blanking shoot. I said, well, I'm trying. He goes, no, look at me. Just blanking shoot. And I like walked away, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to shoot. We'll just see what happens. I already know how to do this. I got to quit thinking it. And talking to, some of the top competitors in the world, like we've done on the podcast, they've all said something very similar of, you get to that point, you got to let your body take it instead of thinking about it. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking about it at the moment, you're probably not going to do so well. So you have to have yourself trained up to where you just kind of step up, and it's not, you can't care, but you can't care too much.
Yeah.
That's a good saying. It's not that you can't care, but you can't care too much. Well, Robbie Latham says it all the time. He says, just get up and shoot. Just slap the trigger. Just pull the trigger. Don't think about it. Just because he really does. I mean, he slaps the trigger. Of course, he's got 10 billion zillion times, but I would like to also then cover something that's, because I hardly ever talk about this. And that is, if you've got to get your gun handling skills up to speed, so you can concentrate on the trigger press and what's going on with the gun itself. And so, because if you still don't know how to load it easily, and if you're still fumbling with changing the magazine, and you still forget where the safety is, and and all that kind of stuff, then you can't concentrate on honing your edge. Mm-hmm. And so I think part of it is, during your practice, is just go through some real basic safety drills with yourself, and holster, unholster, load the magazine, unload the magazine, load the gun, unload the gun, present the gun, take the gun down, and to where all of that becomes so ingrained that you don't even think about it anymore. Now your little gray cells can concentrate on things like the sight picture and the trigger press.
Yep. And the presentation is the most under practiced part of it. We all go to a school, and you'll start 1, 2, however your particular presentation runs, but do we actually do that on the range? Most people don't, but yet you should, because there's reasons they build those skills that way. And so that's one of those things I always try to make myself, and you feel really stupid and weird, especially if you're the only one at the range, 1, 2, 3, hit my mic. If you're the only guy out there, and you're okay, I did that wrong, so I'm going to stop there and go back. You feel like, okay, if anybody's watching me, this is kind of weird, but truly, I think it builds from the first moment you get your hand on the gun. Mm-hmm. If your grip is not proper, for whatever reason, you're getting sloppy. But that's what I see most folks do on just personal practice, whether in a group or by themselves. They just kind of, a lot of folks just walk around with the gun at their side. That's poor gun handling. That's unsafe. But a lot of folks do it because there's not an instructor going, okay, position 1, da, 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 da. But we got to do that. We got to build that self-discipline in ourselves.
Of course, a lot of people will say, my range doesn't allow anyone to draw from a holster. and which is true. It's almost hard to find a range that allow you to do that. So, but we were talking about dry firing. Well, that's good. Or get one of those guns like Tom held up a minute ago, and just make sure you're safe, and then practice dry firing somewhere against the back, wall or something.
Yeah.
But even at the
You can do
range,
presentations at home all day.
yeah, do presentations. But even at the range, though, you just go. I mean, any of them will allow you to hold the gun in front of you and lean it down on the table, in your shooting booth, and then just like 1, 2, 3 present. So you could still have a certain amount of decorum and a certain amount of practice with presentation. So.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you're still getting the benefit of acquiring the sight picture and firing a shot
Mm-hmm.
every time. I do that almost every shot. I'll do multiples, but when I go to the range, I'm always bringing the gun into view before I shot.
Actually, you know what? That's a good point. Is that I see this at public ranges all the time, which is where they bring the gun up and they point it up in the air, and then they bring the gun down while they aim it, and they'll take the shot, and then they'll present it and bring it down again. And I think that also is bad for your shooting because, well, first of all, you're wasting time. And if you're ever in a shooting situation and you bring the gun up like this, you're wasting all that time when you should have just presented the gun. And so that's
Right.
another part of this. And I guess that'd be part of the gun handling stuff and stance. But when you're at the range or you're doing your practices, make sure that when it's time to shoot, you present the gun and just bring it up. Don't do the
fly casting.
Fly casting. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Don't be fly casting.
And if you're going to point the gun at somebody, now you've lost them. All you're seeing is your hand and the gun.
That's it.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
It's a good habit. I mean, I like to tell people with a proper draw and presentation, once that gun rotates out of the holster, you can shoot depending on distance and target at any point during the presentation, right? And, in the perfect shot, I think when this microsecond you get to full extension, you can break the trigger. Again, like you said, Roy, not 1 millisecond of wasted time going above target and then back down on it and all that stuff. So,
yep.
I never realized just how good the good shooters are, but I think this is a lesson for all of us, is that it was actually Robbie Latham was telling me one time we were talking about how do you shoot plate racks, and he was saying, well, he presses, the gun shoots, the front sight goes up, he resets, starts a press as the gun comes back down again. As soon as the sights align, he finishes his press, right? And so I think the fact that people like that can do that as quickly as they can is a good lesson for us to concentrate on just learning how to do it one at a time. Because if, it's, in other words, if you can do it once and then repeat that and do it again, well, then pretty soon what did we say last week about advanced skills are just basics applied, and then that's all Robbie's doing is he's just applying basics advanced, and so I guess one of the things is just don't be in a hurry and think you can do that right out of the the gate.
Yeah. Well, and that's to expound on that point. That's a great point, Roy. And we've all done this, trying to go too fast, too soon, especially if you're learning a new skill or a new gun or whatever it is. You can't just pick something up and go to town. You got to, if you're a semi-auto guy, and this is your first revolver in a long time, slow down, speed racer. Take it easy, get a few, good shots in, get comfortable with the gun handling, as Roy said. But we're all guilty of that, and especially new shooters. Once you can at least get rounds on target, now I'm going to be a Navy SEAL and put a whole bunch of rounds downrange. And that's all fine and well, and it is fun. But if you're reinforcing bad habits, you've actually taken a step back.
Well, you have a built-in governor, like on a vehicle, right? Your built-in governor is a sight picture, You can only shoot as fast as you can get a perfect sight picture again after the last shot. So that's your limit, right?
Yep.
Or the real good shooters get that really fast because they have a great grip and great technique and they know what's going to happen. And newer shooters, you got to wait until those sights settle back down where you want to be.
Yeah. But experienced shooters do it too, because I know I've done it. You get in a competition or a man-on-man shoot-off, and suddenly you get this shot that goes somewhere way out of bounds, and it's like,
yeah.
I know what happened. I was pointing like over here. The sights and my eyes weren't even like within 12 inches of each other. So It happens.
There are
Sometimes
good
when,
tricks though to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, sometimes when you're teaching somebody and you see them shoot, I always watch the shooter, and then I always say, so tell me what happened then. And they think, and then they look at you and they stare at you, and I go, I know you have no idea if you were looking at the sights. You have no idea how you pulled the trigger. You have no idea where right. And they said, yeah, it was like I just blanked out and suddenly the gun went off.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, concentrate on what you're doing.
There's an insider tip for students, whether you're really experienced, you probably know this, but especially new students, don't go fire, bang, but damn. That will draw the attention of the instructor right now. And it doesn't have to be damn, but it could just be, oh, ooh, something like that. Eyes will go on, and not only will we know you messed up, everybody knows you messed up. So try to avoid that.
I have a friend who's a plastic and reconstructive surgeon. And he said during surgery, because some surgeries, the patients are awake. And he said, you never go, oh, oops, or damn. He said, what you do if you make a mistake is you go, there.
There.
He said, because that's everybody's happy now. There.
Yeah.
Somebody, Tom, I think you were talking about some, and you grip the pistol. That's another thing that I think is important that we talk about, because I find generally new shooters don't hold the handguns firmly enough, and they almost always sort of hold them. Somebody referred it as like you would a bird, hard enough that you don't kill it, but not so hard, or hard enough that it can't fly away, but not so hard that you kill it. And I disagree with that. I think you need to hold it hard enough that you would kill it. And I know, yeah, when I'm teaching somebody and I say, okay, now let me show you how hard I hold the gun, and I put my hands around theirs and I squeeze them like really hard, really almost close to white knuckle hard, depending on really what you're doing. And their eyes always go, wow, I didn't know I hold it that hard, and then suddenly they have control of the gun. Now with the 22, it's not that important, but if you've got a smaller, medium-sized 9 or something like that, how you hold that gun firmly allows you to control it better under recoil. And that is usually a significant portion of the learning experience, I found. Once they understand sight picture and trigger squeeze, and then once they understand they need to hold that damn gun tight, especially if they're transitioning to multiple targets. So there.
I know, Moss.
And to be more specific on that, what I see even more often is the support hand is too weak on the grip. They might be squeezing with the firing hand, but just kind of have the support hand just kind of sitting there. And this is the one that's really important for controlling muzzle flip. I like to tell people about the tiki.
Like the teacup thing,
Support hand, you give that a little squeeze, and that's what's holding the muzzle down. It's a good visualization to apply even more pressure with the support hand and the firing hand.
Yeah, with Weaver, it's supposed to be a theoretically 60-40 push-pull. And you build that isometric tension, and that's what helps control recoil and keep the gun on target.
Well, and if you think about it, if you need to have X amount of tension on the gun as a whole, you have a little less with your firing hand, that frees up your muscles to do a nice, easy trigger pull, as opposed to if you're just rigid, rock hard with your firing hands.
Well, I know Moss is a big fan of the crush grip. He says, your nail bed should be turning white. Weaver modern technique proponents say just a firm grip using primarily your second finger. So maybe that's a controversial show we can have one of these nights.
No one would ever want to argue with us about that.
I like the hammer analogy. How tight would you hold a hammer when driving a nail? That seems to work for me.
That's a pretty good analogy. Yeah, actually,
it's got to stay in your hand and not move around.
But it depends. Is it a ball peen with a small nail, or are you trying to kill somebody with it?
We're trying to kill somebody.
Well, I've got another tip I was thinking of. If we beaten that one to death, using camouflage targets. I think that's really important. New shooter, a really experienced shooter, doesn't matter, because we tend to look at our hits. And if we're looking at our hits, we're not looking at our sights. So I think that's, it's fun to shoot paper plate, and paper plates are a great target, but you got to mix that up and use something that doesn't indicate your hits, or move back, 15 yards or so and work at 15 to 25 so that you can't see those hits. So you got to focus on doing your fundamentals instead of, because we've all done it. We all see it, especially in classes. It's bang, bang,
Or negative targets. Have you ever shot with those?
Yeah, those are great.
With literally a cardboard piece with a hole,
The cutout
in the target zone. And if you hit cardboard, you fail, right?
Yep.
You got to not hit the target in those. It's really weird. But
Tiger uses those in his training, and I agree. I think they're really cool. I have a steel plate that I drag out every once in a while, and it's got a hole in it, and it's that, but it's instant feedback, because it's like bang, 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 nothing, bang, 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 tink. It's like, shit, crap.
If you're really having a bad day and you ting, really know for sure if you just miss the whole target, right?
Do you guys remember Support Your Local Sheriff with James Garner? And he comes into town and he's the gunfighter, and they're going to hire him as sheriff. And so the mayor and the local council, he's at the hardware store, and he goes, well, let me demonstrate. So they flip a washer up in the air, and he shoots, and he goes, see? The guy goes, what? Because I put it through the hole. And he goes, sure you did. Sure you did. So they put tape on it, and he goes, now do this. He goes, are you sure? You want me to put another hole in your ceiling? He goes, no, just go ahead and shoot it. So they flip it, and it comes back, and he's shot through the hole. Like, we may have had to offend you. We apologize for. So if you can do that, I want to see the guy can do that. It's pretty impressive.
It reminds me of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I think it was that movie. It was the guy's asking Robert Redford if he can shoot, and he throws a coin out in the ground, and Redford says something like, "Can I move?" He goes, "No, just shoot it." And he shoots, and he misses by like a foot, and then says, "Can I do it again? Can I move this time?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, okay." And so he does this like draw and move, and he hits the thing and knocks it in the air, then hits it again while it's in the air or something. Hollywood for you, right?
Yeah. Because that's true. That's what I do in the backyard here all the time.
Exactly.
And then you do a handspring, right?
There was a demonstration at the Rahagas range in California a million years ago, and I can't remember who it was, a famous kind of a trick shooter kind of guy. And I watched him do exactly that with washers, a big washer, and you put a piece of tape, and way more often than not, he would put a bullet through the washer. And
wow.
You go to YouTube and there are people who do that. There's a guy that I watched the other day. I had somebody make me a longbow, like a classic British 14th century longbow. And so I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on bows and stuff. And there's a guy, he can shoot an aspirin in the air with a bow consistently, one after another. You want to split an arrow? Okay. Done.
What's his name? Like Byron, something. I've interviewed him. Yeah. That's kind of one of his things. It's like, how do you do that? Oh, you just do it.
Well, it's what they always say. Yeah. Practice.
Exactly. And I got to say, that's the final shooting tip.
Yeah.
Practice, practice, practice. There's no shortcut. There's no secret to any of this. And you talk to the top competitors and they say the same thing. We talked about Robbie Latham does it differently than a lot of folks, but you can't argue with his results. But when you have as many trigger squeezes as he's got, eventually it's all going to come together. So the trick the true trick is lead in the air and some dry
disagree.
Practice. Okay.
I disagree with your agreement. Or we haven't. No, kind of. But seriously, I think there is a shortcut. It's called dry fire at home.
Well, that's what I think. I will bet.
I will put forth the fact that 10 minutes of dry fire at home is worth 2 hours of lead in the air at the range. I just made up the two.
I don't know.
Ratio. Yeah. Huh?
Maybe. I mean, it depends on what is that perfect practice.
This makes perfect.
Makes perfect.
It's not practice.
Yeah. But you know what?
Practice makes permanent. Perfect practice makes perfect.
A photographer who used to work with us, Ichiro Nagata, he had a whole cadre of friends that were from Japan. Of course, you can't have a gun there, pretty much zero. And so they used to use airsoft and do competitions there. like our Steel Challenge and the Bianchi Cup and all that. They did a mini-me version over there on indoor range using airsoft. And then once a year, like 20 of them would fly over here and then borrow a gun that someone bought and kept here, right? And then would compete. And you know what? They used to win a lot.
Yeah.
And they may still be doing it, although I don't really hear about it as much. And so I think that kind of goes, though, with what Tom's saying, is that these people were practicing constantly over there with airsoft guns, which is just dry firing, basically, right? And shoot, move, gun handling skills, holster, unholster, draw, trigger press, all that stuff. And then they would come here, pick up a real gun and clean house. And they hadn't fired a live round in a year,
Yeah.
Yep. And there's another thing that when I've talked to competitors, they all say visualization. And it's been proven through testing that actually will increase your competency, especially when you're really good at something. And all that is sitting there and in your mind saying, okay, when I get to the line, I'm going to grip the gun this way. I'm going to bring it to the target. I'm going to line up my sights. I'm going to squeeze the trigger this way. I'm going to feel the recoil. I'm going to get back on target. The plate's going to fall. And just step by step, drilling it through in your mind and talking to champions, Olympic champions, all of them do it. And it really has been proven to increase your competency, especially as you get better.
I've been doing it wrong then, because I use visualization, and I visualize myself standing on the top podium spot and endorsement checks coming in my mailbox. I visualize that daily, and I can't say it's improved my shooting at all. So
well, okay.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
When I do it, I envision the Swedish bikini team, and
I remember them.
We'll
Maybe let's talk about that. No, let's not. All right. All right. So
we already got in trouble 2 weeks ago. So
yeah. So practice, and sight picture and trigger squeeze and grip the gun good and hard and dry fire a lot.
Yep.
There you go. Done.
We nailed it. We should have said that right from the get-go.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Well, we are coming up on time, so I guess we will conclude with that. A great wrap-up, Roy. So if you guys want to see some certain topics, we've been getting email from our vast audience, and we're going to use some of those topics in the coming weeks. So you can get a hold of me, editor at gunsmagazine.com, and you can get a hold of Tom at editor at AmericanHandgunner.com, and you can get a hold of Roy via smoke signal or carrier pigeon.
Facts, right?
Facts.
Did he disappear on us? Oh, there he is. Okay.
Sorry, I was contemplating there.
Yeah. You were thinking about your active digger the other night. It wasn't an active shooter, it was an active digger.
They don't know about that, but I'm tempted to post that video. So
we need to.
I live in Missouri. We have armadillos, and according to their state fish and game department, there is no hunting season, but you're allowed to shoot or trap them if they're being destructive. And trust me, they are destructive. They dig dog-sized holes in rocks. I mean, they're just astounding. And so the other night, Susie woke me. We were just resting and getting ready to go to bed, and she said, "Hey, get out there and take care of business." So I put my robe on and toddled out front, and I lit this armadillo up with my Smith & Wesson M&P 22, by golly. And they're tough little birds, man. I've shot them with a 22 once or twice, and they run
twice
off.
Or
yeah, well, the other night I made sure that
yeah, you lit him up.
Needed to be reloaded when we were done with that gunfight.
Wow.
So
in your robe, that was the best part of all. And we got to see the video because his front door, he's got camera on it. So we're going to have to, that's what we ought to do. One of these shows is just bring up some of those videos and kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000. If you guys remember that, where we just sit and make fun of videos. That'd be pretty fun. So let's put that on the, let's put that on the agenda. So anyway, okay, we'll wrap it up without telling any more armadillo stories. So on behalf of Tom McHale and Roy Huntington, Esquire, OBE, MSRP, and all that, I am Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Join us next week here on your favorite YouTube channel, FMG Publications. And in the meantime, like us, share us, subscribe to us, and all that other stuff I forgot to ask you earlier. So anyway, have a good night, guys.